to my YT channel. This is a continuation. Actually, guys, I'm talking about chemical safety. I'll just break it down segment to segment because it will take me a longer time to do that. Okay, I cannot monitor the time also. That's why I cut it after this particular topics. I cut also like that, so that I can manage. Okay, to explain it, or shall I say, in a direct way, at least. Okay. Okay, grabe kay kumuliko-liko pa. Okay? Now, our topic today is really the safety control measures or the safety precautions in handling and using chemicals. But actually, it's not limited in handling and using only, but also in transportation, okay, of chemicals, okay, and then shifting, right? Shifting of chemicals from one places, from one place to another, something like that. But before that, we need to discuss also the exposures thing, like yeah, exposures to the point, like that, and then before exposures, we need to link that with the health hazards, of course, because if there's no exposures, there will be no health hazards. Okay, so risk. Ganun siya, di ba? Health risk. Labi, di ba? Gito. Fairness, nabugot ni siya. Kaloka. Diba? Hey! Okay, ganon. Makita, guys. Okay. Health risk. Okay. Health risk. Meaning to say this is health impact consequence, right? Or the effect already. So health effect. Oh, so there's a lot of names you can use that. It depends on you. Health risk, health impact, health consequence, ganun, whatever. Okay, name it. Okay, as long as you understand really that these are all the effects. Okay, so health risk will be hazards of the chemicals, HOC, hazards of the chemicals, right? HOC. Pero madali. Okay, plus exposure. Okay. Now, if there will be no exposure, this will become forever only the hazards of the chemicals. Nobody will be exposed, so there's no problem at all. Even though it will take a million of years there, if nobody will be exposing to that particular place where the chemicals are stored, there's no danger in that. Because nobody touches, nobody using. Okay? But it's impossible also that somebody stored that there without any purpose. Okay, that's why it could not be happening. It should always be hazards of the chemicals plus exposures. And the exposed people are what we mean here. Because that we are referring to health man. Okay? Pwede mo sa tabi yung exposed po sa mga properties, equipments, but that is no longer health issues. It's more on the fire and explosion, right? Okay, but we are here on the health. Okay, health impact. Okay, exposure and the hazards of chemicals. Okay? Or shall we say lang general risk or general impact of misuse and of these chemicals and proper handling these chemicals. We can say also that hazards of the chemicals plus exposure. Normally the effect will be fire explosion if there's no exposure to the facilities, work equipment, tools, machines, machineries, laboratory apparatus, or name it. Okay? Like that. So, paano lang siya? So, we should eliminate actually the exposure, but we cannot do that. Okay, that's why we need to do this vlogging mostly. Because we cannot remove zero the exposure. Okay, ganon. Okay. So, health effect lang sa ha. Okay. Health effect exposure. Ganon. Two types. So, two types. Ganon. Two types of health effects. Okay. Basta mo siya, guys. Through exposure, hindi siya ang health effects, ha? Bilang ako yung batang exposure ko, understood na siya, guys. It's really understood that if you talk about health effects, there will be an exposure on the end. Okay? So, first, we have Okay, the short term, okay, and the long term health effect, right? Long term. Okay. And we have also this, IDLH. IDLH. Okay, now we need to know the important key terms of these three. Okay, so we can understand. As I mentioned, guys. Okay, short term. So it is an exposure to the chemicals, or when your body parts are exposed to the chemical substances for at least seconds, minutes, several days, like that only. This is a short term. Okay? So the effect will be normally acute. Okay, acute sickness or acute diseases. Okay, like this. So, acute diseases, or actually it could be also acute sicknesses. It depends on the situation because it means the same. Diseases, ill health, effect, acute diseases like that, or sickness. You can use that anytime you want, as long as it is acute. The K term is very important. It's acute. Okay, and then for the long term, when your body parts are exposed after how many months, how many years, centuries, decades, or permanently, or long term, or forever in your life. So this is long term. This is what we call as chronic disease. Okay. When we talk about the degree, how it is being exposed, so the term now is another. So short term will be, direct exposed. Direct exposed, meaning very quick. Okay. And then for the long term, this is overexposed. Okay, overexposure. Okay, overexposure repeatedly. Overexposure repeatedly. Okay, so very frequent. Okay, like that. So this is talking about the frequency, too much. The frequency, how often you are contacted with the hazards of these chemicals in months, in years, like that. So these are all overexposure or repetitive exposure. Okay, repetitive. Repetitive meaning multiple times exposure. Okay, like that. So sa ganitong direct exposure, that is short term. Okay, then another term for short term also is gonna be the local. Okay, and this long term also is systemic. So local and systemic is already an effect terminologies that you're referring to, but direct and overexposure are more on the exposure terms. Okay? So local and systemic is just same as acute and chronic, correlation. Okay? So systemic. So when you mean of chronic disease, that is systemic due to long-term exposure, overexposure of the hazards of the chemicals. Ganon. We say local, we need to say this is also an acute disease as a result of direct exposure or short-term exposure. Okay, local. Okay, how can we identify between systemic and local? So this is the thing that we should know, the difference. What is really a local or acute and what is really a systemic or a chronic diseases. Okay, so apart from the understanding that the chronic diseases will occur for how many years, it's not really quick. It can develop to overexposure. Systemic also, when your body parts are exposed, especially when you absorb the chemicals in your system. Okay, it's not the skin contact, absorb really. When you ingest that into your system, absorption into the inside your internal vital organs. So it's gonna be contact for the vital organs, so kidney, liver, reproductive, blood, central nervous system, respiratory system through repetitive and overexposure. So you can have chronic diseases. An example for this are cancer. Okay, cancer or any damages of the vital organs, so liver damage, kidney malfunction, ganon. What else? Asbestosis, silicosis, meaning type of diseases for the respiratory lung, or tuberculosis and cancer of the blood due to the white blood cells are very less. Really? It's gonna be like that. Or blood cancer. Okay? Due to the white blood cells not. Okay? And then we have also the anything in the vital organs. So, lung cancer, liver cancer, like whatever, pancreatic cancer, whatever. So these are all chronic diseases, okay, brought by the overexposure and repeated exposure. But most of the effect of this, guys, is the reproductive illnesses and damages. It's usually the chemists, because they are exposed for how many years in working. I remember also one of my colleague before when I do my on-the-job training in Salcon Power Corporation. We do a lot of fuel analysis tests before in my, I think it is fourth year college. We can never graduate in this chemical engineering if you are not exposed to industry chemical test analysis. You should do the actual on it before you will go to your fifth year college. That's really an SOP. When you graduate in this chemical engineering, apart from the plant design and the feasibility study, something like that, you should also be exposed to the actual field of being a chemical engineer, something like that. That's OJT. Okay. Now, the girl there, she's working for how many years in Salcon Power Corporation? And then baog siya. Wa siya anak. Okay, so probably, of course, I will never say her. This is also an insult to tell her due to the exposure of these chemicals. But I know that already, apart from lack of vitamin E, right? Sterility. Okay? It's impossible naman kung lack of vitamin E, right? It should be the exposure of the chemicals that lead to the reproductive, organ sterility. Wala siyang anak for how many years until now? She is a chemist in Salcon Power Corporation. Okay? So, makakos siya of sterility. So, ang i-attack is the reproductive system of that girl because of the overexposure and repetitive exposure of the vapor of those type of chemicals there during the fuel analysis, like that, or any kind of analysis there inside the laboratory. Because her job is really steady in the laboratory, it's not sampling. Okay? She will just wait there for the sampler to give. So she is overly exposed, something like that. Okay? And I don't know, also maybe his husband also, but that's only my prejudgment. Okay? Like that. Okay. Now, muna na siya, short term or long term. And we have also IDLH. Okay. What do you mean by IDLH? Okay, is the exposure to the concentration level above the concentration level of the chemical contaminant vapor, okay, or toxic vapor of these chemicals, and then for maximum 4 times exposure in 1 hour between 2 hours of exposure. For maximum exposure, 4 times, right, in 1 hour. And then between 2 hours of exposure, something like that. So IDLH meaning imminent danger to life and health. That's IDLH. Okay, imminent. Okay. So usually, wagi pa tayo IDLH, right? IDLH is more kuyaw rather than long term because IDLH very dangerous, but dili siya dugay. Okay, 4 maximum exposure man in 1 hour, right? But this, long term is months, years, like that. So ideally, it's just more dangerous, right? Okay, ganon. So this is two types of health effects of handling and using of chemicals, ganon. Now, of course, guys, when we deal with this hazards of chemical, we should also know the threshold limit value or the TLV. Normally, if the industry and plant have no industrial hygienist, because this is the job of the industrial hygienist to set up, the data in terms of the exposure value. But most of the times, some of the companies don't have an industrial hygienist. Okay, sometimes only the safety officer will act, the nurse will act, or the doctor will act. There's no specific industrial hygienist, but for standard companies like Saudi Aramco and Saudi Industries or the Kayan Petrochemicals have their own industrial hygienist to really to work as an industrial hygienist. Not a safety officer, not a nurse, not a doctor. So dili siya not multitasking. So in this way, very good to focus on the exposure level of the chemicals. So we have the TLV, the threshold limit value. Okay. So threshold limit value, what is the definition for this? The definition for this, guys, it is the allowable concentration level of the contaminant vapor or contaminant toxic vapor, like that. Okay. And then in which it can be safely exposed to human being for maximum of 8 hours without adverse health effects. Okay, meaning there's no adverse, meaning abnormal effect, even though 8 hours you're not exposed to. Muna siya ang TLV. Okay, so TLV can be also subdivided into a PEL, ganon, is STEL, and then TWA also. STEL, short-term exposure limit. Short-term exposure limit is the allowable concentration of this contaminant toxic substances or contaminant vapor, like that, and for 15 minutes, like that. Straight 15 minutes siya. Okay, without adverse health effects. Okay, muna siya short term. And then for time weighted average, basically the same na siya sa short term exposure limit. Okay? Ganon. So muna siya. So usually ari kami focus ako guys sa kaning PEL, permissible exposure limit, kato yung definition ng ingon na allowable concentration of contaminant substance or contaminant air, like that, because air is vapor, right? That can be safely exposed to a human being or a worker, okay, in 8 hours without adverse health effects. Ato mo focus anak mo na siya itong pamilhanan ang TLV. Okay, specific na siya, siya permissible exposure limit. Okay, na naman tayo guys. We go na sa atong topic din na safety precaution and safety control measures, because so that we know what we are trying to control. Okay? Ganon. Okay, nakakaloka. So na oras ko eh. Mura sila kung oras ang gayon na. Nakakaloka. Okay, 10 minutes na paspasun. Okay. So safety control measures and safety measures or whatever you call this one. Based sa hierarchy of controls ha. Okay, so safety hierarchy of controls sa tungkuan. Nakakaluka. Dali, uy! Nahulot po ang kuwan. Fairness. Ano pa dahil siya? Nakakaluka. So first, this is what we call guys as a SHC. Okay, safety hierarchy of controls in dealing or handling or using chemicals. First, we need to, actually this is all, not only limited to chemicals, but still the same pattern we will be able to use. Okay, first elimination, okay, and then substitution. Okay, number 2 is engineering control. Okay, nakakaloka. Okay, balik pa rin siya po all tayo guys. Number 3 is administrative control. Okay, like that. Okay, number 4, we have the PPE for the exposure control. PPE exposure controls. Okay, like that. That's why I discussed with exposure, right? So exposure controls. Okay. Number 5 is gonna be, okay, number 5 is gonna be the health, okay, hygiene. Okay? Di ba? Hindi ako ng health hygiene. Actually, hindi mo siya necessary, but kailangan talaga siya puno. Okay? Like that. Okay? So, gimodify lang nato ang safety hierarchy of controls. Actually, health and hygiene is not considered, but since these are chemicals, health and hygiene practices are very important. Okay? Like that. Okay. Elimination, gana-gana. Elimination, it's very necessary to physically remove the hazards of a chemical in the workplace. That's elimination. And substitution is really necessary to substitute or to replace very hazardous chemicals to less hazardous of chemicals, or to those chemicals that are not hazardous. But since we are working, we cannot avoid that. So we cannot use the number 1 technique. Okay? So sometimes in our operations, in our tests, in our chemical tests, there are specific chemicals that we cannot replace that to another because it is proven to be effective in using that one to have a very quality product in using that. Actually, there are still other options, but this option of chemical is really good, but it is hazardous to the other. So we have no choice. Okay?
Off input mode.
You get the point? Ganon. Ganon. Okay. Number 2, engineering controls. Engineering controls, for example, you need to have ventilation systems in your chemical laboratory by putting a fume hood systems for all chemical vapors, especially flammable vapors that will escape. Okay, and then it will escape to the atmosphere. Okay, like that. So 2 reasons for the health of the people, and the number 2, to avoid fire, especially if the vapor are flammable. It will contact to the ignition sources. Get the point? Something like that. That's engineering. Another also is the grounding, or earthing, or banding of the flammable liquid containers and tanks to avoid, related fire exposure related also, incidents and accidents. These are common in Aramco, like that, to those gases factories and plants, oil and gas. They have a very flammable liquid tanks because I've worked there also in Saudi and Saudi Aramco before. Okay, like that. So in the field, I am really a field safety engineer. I'm not a secretarial. Okay. I'm not a secretarial na sa keyboard lang. Okay? So we have after the engineering control, and then we have the administrative control na tayo, guys, right? Tapos na sa engineering control. So administrative control is very huge. And this is the most widely used because it doesn't have to need any equipment to do this. It doesn't need any cost to do this. And then it's very easy to, not very easy, it's very comfortable to do this. You need to have only the program for this. For example, the laboratory setting, example ng laboratory setting, you should have your own work instructions, work safety instructions how to use the chemicals. It should be posted in the wall in your laboratory. Okay? So that's part of administrative control. Signaging, signboard are example of administrative control. Step 1, ganon. Step 2, ganon. Check the electrical cords like that. Wipe the equipment, the titration apparatus before using. Ganon, ganon. Whatever. Do not contact, ganon. So that the people inside the laboratory have knowledge what them to make safe all the time. Okay? Like that, not only like that, no system. Okay? Like that for the administrative control. Work instruction, SOPs, safe operating procedures, by having also the like a manual guide that is very accessible to, you will place that in your in the table, so anybody can access that if they want, for example, for audit purposes, like that. Okay, SOP. So chemical laboratory safe operating procedure, none created by QZ director or whatever, something like that. So klaro siya, wala siya transparent. So anything they've done are properly documented. Okay, something like that. So wala siya mga, mga administrative control. What else? For the workers, for example, ano lang siya, reading of chemical labels. You have an idea in reading the chemical labels in all the chemicals. For example, you need to read the hazard signs, the warning signs, like that. If it is a flammable, hazardous, toxic, reactive, mga ganun siya. Hazard statements, yung mga words lang, and then symbols, yung tanong sa mga mata. Okay, so that is the administrative control. Okay, and then it's in there also, you have to be able to have a proper storage of your chemical containers, something like that, or good and safe storage area of your chemicals. And it must be properly labeled and identified. Ganon. Okay? Get a point. The storage. Okay, and then using of chemicals and handling of chemicals must be only specified to competent and authorized persons and those who are trained only. So this can also can solve, any related incidents and accidents related to how to handle the chemicals. So again, using handling of chemicals must be limited to competent, authorized, and trained persons. Something like that. You get the point? Okay, that's also part of the administrative controls. And then also, you will also know also the proper segregation of, let us say, inadequate materials generally. But specifically, you need to segregate the flammable from explosive from reactive from radioactive. So you have a system of segregation process of incompatible materials or incompatible chemical substances. It's also part of administrative control. You don't have to require course for that, and you don't have like that, blah, 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 so and so. Only let's say the storage, but normally you have arranged already the storage for that. For a minimum of 20 feet away. Example, like combustible materials, 20 feet away from the flammable gas cylinders, mga ganun siya. So, under na siya sa segregation of incompatibility of materials. Ganon. Okay, that's our administrative control. So, dili pa lang daan sa administrative control, pasok na sa banga. Wala joy na tabo nga accidente. Okay? Even though administrative control lang siya. Okay? You get the point. Now, alita sa number 4, ang PPE. So, PPE is the least control, meaning not really that very important. Okay? So, the most important is the number 1, and the least is the number 4, which is the PPE, exposure control. Because there's no chemical splashes if you take the administrative control. Because you properly stored it, you labeled it, you closed it properly, then why it splashes? Because it's because of you. That's why it's splashed. Get the point? So it's not really the fault of the chemicals to splash, it's your fault. Okay, that's why it's the number 3 is very, very important. Okay, so that is PPE and exposure. Usually, guys, ano lang siya, guys, when it will be splashed and in contact to your chemicals, in contact to your skin. Chemicals. Skin. So, yung water namin, guys, wash for at least 20 minutes in a running water. So that is the first aid measure for that, okay? And then, body, if still persists, go and consult to your doctor. Nearest doctor, any health representative. Ano siya per me? Okay? Wash with running water for 20 minutes. And then if still persists, consult doctor. O, di ba? Ganon. Ganon siya sa sa splashing of that chemical, ano. Then if grabe na siya, splash siya, nasunod na yun sa imong mga ginawaan. So, yun na pag running water, go directly to the doctor. Consult your doctor or physician nearest, something like that for the first aid measure. Okay? For the chemical contact. Actually, you will use the PPE. There are the rubber hand gloves, the latex hand gloves, the neoprene hand gloves like that, the polyvinyl hand gloves, the rubber suit or the body clothing like that, intended for the chemicals like that purpose. And then you have also to build the rubber boots, rubber. Okay, if you're dealing really with too much liquids and solvents. For the splashing that will go to your feet. Okay, that's why rubber boots. Ganon. It's not enough the safety shoes. It depends on your type of work, ha? Okay, ganon. And then, if you have a long hair, you should keep your hair properly tight with a cover so that it will not react to the certain chemicals there. Hair. Okay, and then do not wear jewelry during your chemical tests and analysis or any handling of chemical substances. Jewelry, remove that before doing any related laboratory job or something like that. So, apilagyan ko na siya sa exposure control, ha? Ganon. And then if guys, if the vapor emitted fumes like that or whatever, okay siya, then you can wear also respiratory mask. Okay, so you can have a 95, but most of the respiratory mask will be the gas mask with cartridge filter or air purifying respirators, APR, or the SABA. SABA ni Dinima. Supplied air breathing apparatus. Okay? So, waman ta mag-deal of confined space na you should wear the SCBA, safe content breathing apparatus. So, SABA lang siya, supplied air breathing apparatus. Any devices that will supply air. Okay, to decontaminate the fumes like that, whatever, in your job. But normally, what man siya add to sa air purifying respirators. Okay, but if it does not release gaseous in your test, there's no issue respiratory mask. There's no issue, especially if it's solid. Unless you will hit the solid and it will vaporize. Of course, it will create a smoke or a gas. But if nothing, there's no such heating process, then you should not also require to wear a mask. Okay? Under normal circumstances, right? That's what because it will not emit vapor. Okay, solid naman din siya. Okay, ganon. So if you're exposed outside na is another setting. You can use the N95 respirators, the normal gas mask, and then, if you are in the hospital, like that, whatever, you can also use the surgical mask. Surgical, the blue and at the back is white, something like that. Okay? So, katong na pang COVID-19 na mga mask. Applicable ana. Okay? You get the point. But for vapor, it will never stop the vapor. Okay? For this kind of masks. Okay? Get the point? Pangayon na siya sa mga COVID na mga exposure. Ganon. So the last guys will be the health and hygiene practices. Oh my gosh. This is very important guys that before and after the completion of your any related handling and using of chemicals work or job, you need to wash your hands properly with a soap because there's a problem of ingestion. Okay, so if, for example, if the chemicals are very, very highly toxic and then it can create poison to your vital organs, then problem. It can create, a stomach pain, abdominal pain, and body. You are already poisoned by the chemicals because you did not wash your hands, and there's a lot of chemical residues penetrating into your epidermis. Ganon. And then it's also go to your esophagus, ganon, whatever, na. Okay? And it will reach to your digestive tract. Oh, ganon, di ba? Intestines. So, problem na naman. So, you should wash your hands before and after the completion of your any related utilization and handling of chemical substances. O, di ba? Now, since I talked to you to this, I forgot to discuss the methods of, exposure, routes of entry into our human health. I forgot to discuss, sorry. Because, the hazards, the risk and the impact of the health hazards we're not, automatically will be not coming without this entry to our human body. So I need to discuss, right? Okay? So siya, ligawas gino siya sa Bush examination in July. Ano ba yun? Sa National Examination for Basic Occupational Safety and Health sa una. Ligawas din siya, joke pala guys. Okay, this is the exposure, routes of entry, to humans, the chemicals. Okay, first we need the ingestion. Okay, the ingestion, I already discussed, right? It will goes and be absorbed to the internal body vital organs, and it can create poison or whatever, like that, and burden after how many years, chronic diseases, cancer, whatever. Okay? So this is very dangerous, ingestion. So wash your hands properly before and after. Okay? Ganon. Kung tinikas ang hisgutan. Okay. Number 2, inhalation. Ganon. Inhalation. Klaro ka siya obvious, right? Inhalation through smell. Okay? Through smell of the odor. Like the smell of the chemical substances. Okay, you will be inhaling that one, and you will be breathing that one, and it will goes to your system also. Normally, the respiratory system. Okay, and normally it can create what do you call this one? Cough, asthma, like that, or whatever related to the diseases of the lungs. And then budding, if that is very very serious, lung cancer, right? Okay, chronic disease. Especially overexposure and repeated exposure for how many years. Okay, so that's inhalation. Okay. Number 3 is absorption. Okay. Absorption. Absorption, guys, is really the contact through the skin. Okay, in our epidermis, the outer layer of the skin. Because our skin has so many pores. And the chemical, vapor, will contact there, and the liquid, right, will contact there, and then we'll never wash it because we didn't recognize it. Okay, that's why we have a PPE, right, to cover your arms, your hands. But for example, if you're very lazy to do that, of course it will be absorbed on your skin. So problem again, there will be dermatitis, inflammation of your vital organs, like that. Because it will go to your internal body system also if you will never care. Okay, not only limited to the skin. The absorption process takes place initially in the skin, but after that it will go and penetrated to your internal or vital organs too. Okay, so that is absorption. Okay, number 4, charot. Opat naman siya, guys. Number 4 is the direct contact. Okay, ginahin ko siyang direct contact, guys, ha? Kay limited review na siya sa skin. Muna siya katong example is injection through a syringe. That is direct contact. For example, if you are doing what's this one? Injection of, pharmaceutical toxic substances. So, di ba, mga drug addiction, gano'n, through syringe. So, muna siyang mga hazards niya. Direct contact. Okay? Direct contact or injection. Muna na siya. Injection. Okay? Not only also the application also of pressurized device. Okay, like that, to penetrate into your body. So that's also under direct contact and injection. So, upat rin siya, guys. Ang route of entry. Okay? Ganon. So, you can achieve acute hazards or acute diseases and chronic diseases like that, blah, 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 so and so with this 4 exposure routes of entry to the chemicals in our human body system. And I thank you. Any questions so far? Thank you so much for watching this live stream, and you can comment down below in the comment section. You can subscribe my YT channel if you want to, and you can click the notification bell for some newest updates. If I am a singer, eternal voice. Bye bye, God bless everybody. See you later. Ganon. Da. Nahuman na dyan. Woo!